let's have a look at vehicles, Alex.
Now, as the meat grinder grinds on, admitted even by Admiral Radekin, the Western allies are doing all they can to produce and send what they insist is the right specification of equipment to the Ukrainians. Bild Zeitung, the leading German title, at least in terms of numbers of readers, has come up with a number of shocks recently, and this is the first of the latest of them. Equipment scandal shakes the German Defense Ministry. So what's on screen there is an armored personnel carrier produced allegedly by the German firm FFG. Let's put that on screen. They are based up in Flensburg in Schleswig-Holstein near the German border. And they seem, between Defense Ministry incompetence and perhaps some sharp dealing by FFG, they seem to have got the wrong-headed idea into the procurers' minds that this was a German-made vehicle and a straight substitute for the fully German Rheinmetall Fuchs, or Fox, the well-known German armored personnel carrier, which can withstand mine blasts. Now, it turns out that this is not produced originally by FFG in Flensburg or anywhere in Germany. It is, in fact, produced by TAG Middle East. Some people will know them, based in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, I believe. And it is its model name is actually the BAT UMG, the BATT UMG. It only has grade 6 armor protection. And this was apparently not well understood by either Ukrainians or the Germans when it was supplied. And this is the result. We can see a couple of shots here from a field of encounter near Bakhmut. This was not even a mine, which is, of course, the heaviest thing you need to try to defend against with an armored personnel carrier. This amount of damage that we see here was done by a simple grenade thrown by the Russians. I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that, Brian, but it is rather shocking that this amount of damage can be done to an armored personnel carrier supplied to the Ukrainians, which they and Berlin understood wrongly at the time was produced by the Germans to their own specification.
Yeah, I really can't comment too much on it. It seems a lot of damage to me for a grenade, but it could have been a relatively small caliber shell landing close. Difficult to tell.
But be that as it may, it's not what you would expect and not what the German taxpayers would expect. And they seem to have paid over the odds for this alleged FFG armored personnel carrier. Moving on to the west coast of the United States, the United States Secretary of the Navy has been giving a talk at San Diego, Mr. Del Toro, and he seems to have taken the gloves off in a standing room only speech delivered to contractors to that great beast, which is the United States Navy. It's covered here by C4ISRnet, which covers command, control, and intelligence issues in the US military. With this headline, Del Toro asks Navy contractors, and of course San Diego is pretty much the world headquarters of Navy business, to consider taxpayers over shareholders. What did he say in the speech? You can't be asking the American taxpayer, he said, to make even greater public investments while you continue, in some cases, speaking directly here to the naval contractors, to goose your stock prices through stock buybacks, deferring promised capital investments, and other accounting maneuvers that to some seem to prioritize stock prices rather than making the needed fundamental investments in the industrial base in your own companies at a time when our nation needs us to be at all-ahead flank. And he suggests in the rest of that speech quoted there that the American people are not getting what they paid for. Whether this will do any good, I don't know, but I don't understand, or I don't see any indications that any of the Eurasian powers are having any such struggles with their own military contractors. Another item of note, staying with US naval issues, is in the eastern Mediterranean there, just off Crete, as reported by Military Eye, the USS Bataan and the rest of her group is an amphibious ready group. And we read here a bit of a spin. The Pentagon has extended their deployment because of regional turmoil. That's code, of course, for the Gaza war, which is spinning even further out of control. I read that, given the shortage of amphibious vessels that we've recently covered, as meaning there are no other amphibious ready groups, which the US Navy could send in to relieve them. And there has been quite some rumbling stateside recently about this, that naval officers are saying, I don't have anyone to replace the exhausted troops out at sea. Moving to aerial matters, the Aviationist has picked up that there is now a full trifecta of nose flops by all the F-35 variants. So the F-35A is the conventional takeoff, the B is the short takeoff, the C is the carrier deck. And this one too now, while a pilot from the US Marine Corps was getting out of it, had this happen to it. And you see that it's landed on the fairing for the electro-optical sensors. I've seen different reports on whether they were cabbaged or not by this involuntary kneeling act by the plane. But there you are, all varieties of the F-35 now produce that effect at times. The Estonians have pointed something rather embarrassing out as well, as carried by Defence One, that it takes Europe at least a year to fill a Ukrainian order for artillery shells, particularly the coveted and most useful 155mm shells. So Mr. Salm of the Estonian Defence Ministry says that it's been difficult for the Europeans even to buy stock from outside the European Union, from countries like Pakistan, which still haven't produced them. And he says that there's another very large obstacle in the room, that's Estonian English for elephant in the room, the willingness of third countries to sell. So a lot of countries that aren't in the EU actually would prefer to maintain good relations with Russia. And he says that after having given Ukrainians substandard or Soviet standard munitions for 2 years, a lot of European countries' cupboards are going bare. The munitions are drying out, as he put it. We then move on to the Kyiv Independent, which tweets out this rather astonishing news, that the Prime Minister of Denmark has said that Denmark is going to donate not some, nor a lot, but all of its artillery to Ukraine. That's right, Denmark is clearing out its artillery. So Mette Frederiksen, the Prime Minister, speaking at the 7th Ukraine Lunch, which is organized on the margins of the Munich Security Conference under the auspices of the Viktor Pinchuk Charitable Foundation, which we've mentioned before, said this, quote, "There is still ammunition in European stocks. This is not a question of only production, in other words, just producing or buying, as per the previous slide in this segment, because we, that is NATO members in their own countries, have the weapons, we have ammunition, we have air defense that we don't have to use ourselves at the moment, that we should deliver to Ukraine." I'm a bit perplexed, to be honest, Brian, by the idea that a European country, especially in the Baltic, doesn't have a need for its artillery and its ammunition. What on earth is perhaps going through her mind there?
Well, that's a very good question, Alex. I certainly don't know, but an easy response is, how can you possibly work with NATO if you simply give all of your military equipment away? We are seeing utter breakdown, organised breakdown within the European Union and certainly within NATO in respect of its military capability. And to my mind, this isn't accidental, this is deliberate.
I would concur with that. Meanwhile, we see that Associated Press has found a rather striking decision in the Norwegian town of Drammen, which has a large number of refugees and migrants of more general kinds. This appears to be unlawful, but perhaps of symbolic value, that the council there at municipal level has decided that it will only settle Ukrainian refugees and not any others. Apparently, this is against international law and Norwegian law, but it shows something, again, of the mindset, particularly of Scandinavian countries more generally, compared with Frederiksen's remarks there. The Mail Online reports from Northamptonshire that a council wrongly, it insists it was a bona fide error, but wrote to a couple in their 70s, saying that their perfectly ordinary family home was apparently derelict, according to information they held, and therefore they were going to use a compulsory purchase order, eminent domain to the Americans, to get them out. And the letter actually stated it's because we have a lot of Ukrainians and others to house. So viewers can make of that or not, whether or not they think it was genuinely a mistake. I'll just close this segment with reflections on the death of Alexei Navalny. I do not know any more than anyone else who killed him and why, but URA.ru is reporting that the Speaker of the Duma, the Russian Parliament, Vyacheslav Volodin, is blaming Washington and Brussels for the death. He doesn't have chapter and verse with his accusation. You will see the asterisk there on the name Navalny in the top line of the headline. That's because Russia takes a very hard line attitude to this, and anyone who's on the list of supposed terrorists has to have that fact notified in headlines. So a bit chilling. Just to flag up to people who want to look into this, Martin Armstrong, the long-term economist, has got a lot of detail on this. In fact, he was well involved in 1998 when a lot of the pieces fell into place in Russia from his base in London. He's written the piece Alexei Navalny Behind the Curtain, and he concludes that Navalny was genuinely, as a Western mainstream media would have it, genuinely going after corruption. But it was the oligarchs and the survivors of what he calls Berezovsky's 7 oligarchs who had the interest in killing him. And that is actually a point that goes through this piece. It raises more questions than it answers. For balance, Iurie Roșca in Moldova, whose interview with us will be out soon, who takes an anti-Putin stance, equally familiar with the backgrounds and the players in Moscow, has said this at the end of his piece, also will be in the show notes, The Death of a Political Prisoner and Its Stakes. He says that the alternative press, and he's not having a dig at particular titles, so much less am I, but he's saying that there are some who take a fanatical view, admiring Putin, and who have taken this opportunity to say that Navalny almost deserved to die, whoever it was who saw to it that he had his ridiculously well-timed demise, who knows. But there is a man that's died here. And Roșca is pointing out that there is sometimes a failure of gumption in our free media as well as our legacy media when it comes to such matters. There is one more from me as well, yes. Sorry about that. The BBC has descended to this level of bathos. Alexei Navalny dies in prison, and the BBC News has put out, Trump remains silent. They've got a wonderful graphic of Trump having made 90 posts on Truth Social Network, and none of them about Alexei Navalny. I think it's safe to say nobody takes the BBC's line seriously outside Britain anymore when it comes to such events.
Okay, Alex, thank you very much for that. And of course, Navalny was a BBC answer to the fall of Avdiivka.